Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz trombonist, singer, and songwriter Natalie Cressman. Her latest album is 2018's CD called The Traces. So she began studying trombone with her father, who was a trombonist with Santana for quite some time. But she set out to be a dancer rather than a musician, but an injury halted all that. She would go on to study at the Manhattan School of Music and hook up with jam band pioneer Trey Anastasio of the band Phish, and got recruited for his touring band. Her career has taken many musical forms and journeys, so please get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
During your career, you've kind of gone from, kind of a straight-ahead jazz approach to some more pop leanings. And your last album that you put out, The Traces, it kind of has more of a pop leaning. Talk to me a little bit about how your sound has evolved over the years.
Yeah, so I've always really loved the power of words. Like as a child, I was really into creative writing, and then I got really caught up with music and kind of stopped writing as much in terms of lyrical content. And then I went to school in New York City and started this group, and I really enjoyed writing for multiple horn players, and then eventually kind of came back to the idea of incorporating some music with words into my original stuff. So I'm really influenced by Joni Mitchell, and so kind of that fusion of kind of singer-songwriter and sometimes more pop leanings with like rich harmony and orchestration. So it's kind of, more and more I've just been really taken with the power of words to really give meaning to the music and actually using the words as like kind of cues to how to set the words to music that really bring out the meaning of the songs. So that's basically been the journey. Although I still really love playing straight ahead jazz. I just feel like for me as a composer, I feel like I have a lot to say kind of in the music that's kind of in between jazz and other modern styles of music.
So where did you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco and grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area till I moved away at 18.
So let me ask you this. Your mother, Sandy, had kind of a Brazilian music leaning as a vocalist, and your dad, Jeff, was with Santana, and he was a recording engineer and a trombonist. So talk to me about being around parents that were so musically inclined and how that influenced you growing up. Was music something they really wanted you to get into, or was there kind of free reign for you to choose what you wanted to do?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely pretty free reign. I mean, they were happy to support me and involve me in their musical world, but they kind of waited till I kind of gave the green light and said, oh, this is what I really want to do. In fact, music was more of kind of an informal way of us all hanging out when I was younger. I used to sing a lot with my mom and my sister, like doing 3-part vocal harmonies, and when I decided to pick the trombone, it was like my dad was just kind of informally playing with me and teaching me, but it wasn't like a structured like lesson format. And so I think that kind of made it all that much more compelling because it just had this really social and kind of joyful aspect for so long that when I decided to get serious about it, I kind of knew all the ways that music could, be at once kind of, cerebral and just emotional and social and had seen the way that, my parents were friends with so many people from so many different cultures because of music, and that was really compelling to me.
The trombone, getting into that instrument, is there a big learning curve getting into that? Was it a hard instrument to pick up?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a very forgiving instrument because even just making a tone, like a sound, is a challenge enough. Beyond that, there's no keys or valves to tell you exactly where the note is. It's very reliant on, finding the positions by ear. And eventually muscle memory does take over and where the 7 positions are. But I think the fact that I'd grown up around music made it a little bit easier because I had kind of naturally a pretty developed ear. So being able to find the notes and kind of build my skills on the instrument, I think came slightly easier than it does once someone that, you know, is really new to music in general.
So you were originally a dancer and you got injured. Do you think that would have been something you would have continued to pursue if you didn't get injured?
I think it would have, but I don't know how successful I would have been. I mean, the dance world is even more highly competitive than the music world, so you know, I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise. It's so competitive and the span of your career is so short because it's, you know, reliant on the health of your body. So I think, you know, it's great that in music, not only can you be whatever size and look however you want and still be able to play and have a successful career in music regardless, but also you can be playing music well into your old age. So I think I made the right decision, even if it was kind of fate that brought me to choose music over dance. I think it was a good decision.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you come out east, as you mentioned before, in 2009 to the Manhattan School of Music. And I want to know, what did you learn in a formal environment? You obviously grew up around music and got taught kind of both formally and informally. So what did you learn in college?
Well, I think a lot of the kind of music theory and arranging orchestration tools, that is all really useful to kind of pick up in a classroom environment. I hadn't had like super formal education in those areas, especially like I hadn't played much bebop coming into Manhattan School of Music, and they really focus on that and kind of the logic of the bebop style. So I think that was really valuable for me to get in a, you know, a competitive and academic setting. And yeah, definitely the classes that I took, you know, learning about how to write for different instruments has definitely come in useful over the years.
So when you look through your bio, you see a lot of different flavors of music that you've been involved with, from, you know, Latin jazz, jam band, funk trombone, and avant-garde, and there's all of these things. How do all of those different things feed into your head? So instead of just asking you, what do you prefer, because obviously you wouldn't have done all of these if you didn't want to, but how do all of these different genres and tastes of music fit into who you are as a musician?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I definitely have always had a really eclectic taste in music, so I think even if, you know, it had been easy to just purely play what would be considered jazz, I don't even know if that would be as fulfilling as kind of having all these different elements kind of in my musical life. But I think that the kind of just the mindset that I have to be in to play in all these different styles really helps me just as a composer and artist, because I've had to do a lot of digging and homework to be able to play, you know, a James Brown style funk gig versus a straight ahead jazz gig or a Brazilian jazz gig. And so I think kind of having that mindset allows me to be a bit of a chameleon, and then also just absorbing all those different styles of music allows me to kind of come up with original music and material that kind of doesn't sound like anything else because of the unique combination of various genres and styles.
So you've done some work with Phish, and the one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize about them is that from what I understand, they are really steeped in jazz theory. Is that correct?
Yeah, jazz and classical theory. They went to University of Vermont, and I think Trey Anastasio in particular, he studied a lot of different forms of classical and jazz composition and theory, and they definitely all have that background.
So what did you learn from them as far as, like jazz, for instance? Or even just in general, what did you learn from their wealth of experience as a musician?
Well, the main takeaway there's so many things I could say in response to that, but the way that they play together as a band, there's so much subtlety and sensitivity and awareness that goes across the stage. And I think that sometimes it can be easy to just kind of go on autopilot if you playing material that you know really well night after night. You could just kind of phone it in and just kind of focus on yourself and your solos. But one of the things that they do so well is sometimes they're all improvising, and it's not like one distinct solo, but it's rather all of them kind of feeding energy back and forth to each other. And I think that that's always such a great and unique sound and mindset. And when I'm, soloing in various styles of music, I often like to think about that, of finding that space that there is and kind of letting things simmer and bubble up together in kind of a more collective manner than just, here I am out in front doing my thing and showing everybody what I'm capable of. And there's something very selfless about their way of really listening and feeding off each other and being patient with the way a song develops.
So you, in 2016, the SF Jazz Collective asked you to develop a concert celebrating Melba Liston, and Melba is one of the top trombonists of all time. What kind of experience was that?
Oh, it was a really great opportunity to really delve into her music deeply. Because even though she is kind of a name in terms of jazz trombone, a lot of people aren't super familiar with her, and it actually was a bit of a challenge to find all the information that I wanted to get on her background and even just kind of getting my hands on some of her music. So the 90% of the material that I presented, I ended up transcribing the orchestrations by ear and then arranging it for the quintet that I had. So it wasn't like, say a Joe Henderson tribute where, a bunch of his songs, enough songs for a concert are in the real book as it is, and you just have to kind of arrange it however you want. So it was a lot of digging and really sitting with the music, and especially with some of her larger works with Randy Weston. It took quite a bit of time, so I really kind of felt like I was really getting inside of her head as an arranger and composer, and I enjoyed that a lot. And I mean, also just, it doubled my respect for all that she did and contributed to music.
We're probably just, the way we are as people, we're influenced so much by those shows we see live, and especially as a musician, I would think that would be a real inspiration for your playing. So what jazz shows have you seen live that have left a pretty deep impression on you?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of what I've seen recently that is considered jazz. Well, I've seen one of my really favorite bass players ever is Christian McBride, and I saw him at the Vanguard not too long ago, and that was a really, really beautiful concert. He played a range of some standards and some of his original music, which I actually in high school, my high school graduation, I had a combo that performed one of his songs Under the Shade of the Cedar Tree, and since then I've met him and we've become friends. So that it was cool to go see him live with in a small setting, because he does a lot of stuff with his big band too. But I believe the rhythm section was him and Christian Sands and Ulysses Owens on drums, and he also played some old blues tunes, and he's played with James Brown for a little bit and so many great jazz artists, and just kind of seeing the breadth of what he's capable of doing live was just left a really big impression on me.
How do you feel about your career up to this point? You've been very active. You've kind of been a chameleon going into different avenues of releases between vocal and trombone. Are you happy with how everything has turned out up to this point? Yeah,
I really feel really lucky to have such a diverse career, and, even just being able to make a living performing in New York City is kind of a feat within itself these days. So I'm very happy with that. I do feel like I wish that it was easier to, take original music and tour it in this day and age, just because of the way that the music industry is kind of broken down a little bit. So I've managed to make it happen, but, I'm hoping that at some point it would be possible to take the music internationally, because I know that there's lots of great audiences in Europe and Japan, and it's just a little bit difficult as an independent artist to get there.
Let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
I love jazz. I love jazz because of the kind of improvisational element that you can take a song that's been written almost 100 years ago and play it not only play it yourself in so many different ways, but you can go back and hear so many different and equally beautiful interpretations of it. I love the kind of team spirit that playing jazz in a band provides. There's, a certain amount of sharing the space and interacting and building things as a collective rather than, the kind of pop star mentality of somebody out in front and other people backing them up without much involvement or interaction. And I love that, playing improv-based music, that anything it can be possible, really, and that just keeps it ever evolving, and every night's a new adventure.
Let me ask you this. Everyone has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but you know yourself best. So who do you think you are?
Oh, this is a deep question. I don't know. I mean, I kind of think of myself as, I don't know, a good listener when I'm playing with other people. I hope that is what other people would say about me. And with a lot of reverence for many different musical traditions, and I try not to steal from other musical cultures without really doing my homework and learning it on a deep level. And I, try to study many different styles of music, and I have a really global sense of what music can be, even within the jazz context, especially in this day and age where so much music has sprung from jazz and kept it living on. And I try to bring that all in together with what I do, whether it's with my own band or with other people's bands.
Beautiful. I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Natalie, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz to talk about your musical career and everything in between. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Natalie for her time, her stories, and her honesty. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.